All right, moving on, we'll quickly scamper on to the next position, which is one that's up for a lot of debate on Dolphins Twitter, who a lot of people are like adamant that the O-line improved a hell of a lot last year, and it did, but it still wasn't very good in my book. And I know that it was 3 rookies on the line, but there was a reason that Tua looked a bit shaky at times, and that was because the pass rush was just getting home very quickly. Ollie, I think if we stay at 3, we've got to take Penei Sewell if he's there. That's my opinion. Or if we trade back, like your colleague Dalton said last week, someone like Christian Darrisaw is perfect there as well. What's your opinion, mate? Do you think that's like a good way to spend your first pick in the first round? Sorry, shaking his head.
Personally, yes, I do. I think you've got a rookie quarterback, well, second year quarterback, let's call him now, into it. You've got to protect the guy. And for me, building a franchise, a competitive, winning franchise year in, year out, starts with building the offensive line. You can't. You look back historically, guys like David Carr at the Texans got absolutely brutalized in his first year in the NFL because the Texans failed to address the offensive line. You see it year in, year out where quarterbacks come in and they just get absolutely battered, and it knocks their confidence. You've got a guy like Tua who's got a bit of an injury history as well. You need to protect that investment, and I do believe it's a worthwhile investment in Tua. I really do. You need to protect him. Penei Sewell is for me is a god of an offensive tackle. I think taking him would be a fantastic investment for the Dolphins. At the same time, you look down the offensive tackle class, and it is probably one of the deepest groups in this entire 2021 draft class. Outside, maybe, it's up there. Cornerback, offensive tackle, and wide receiver are probably the 3 deepest classes in here. So you're still going to be able to get what I believe would be a starting left tackle, right tackle. Maybe with that first pick of the second round, pick 36, you might be able to get a guy like Alex Leatherwood start on the right-hand side. You might be able to get a guy like Tevin Jenkins. You might get a guy like Liam Eichenberg out of Notre Dame. You can build solid offensive line with, I think, anywhere down to the middle of the second round. There are guys that could start day one in the NFL. I also believe with the Dolphins, you look at the free agency acquisitions you've made this offseason. Matt Skura isn't it. He isn't it at centre position for the guy out of the Ravens. You need to upgrade there as well. You build from the inside out, and there's less decent offensive centres and guards than there are offensive tackles. Give me a guy like Creed Humphrey. Give me a guy like Landon Dickerson in the centre of that offensive line. For me, I don't think you can go wrong with building the University of Alabama in Miami. Bring in Landon Dickerson. Bring in Jalen Waddle with that 3rd overall pick. Bring in Najee Harris at 18. Hell, you could even bring in Dylan Moses now that we've talked about it. Just build it. You're looking at a program that is historically great in college football. You've got one of the best quarterbacks they've ever had. Just build it. Just rebuild it in Miami. Why not?
I mean, I think a lot of people would agree, wouldn't they? Si, what do you reckon? You shook your head there. Not the pick for you to start the draft?
Not at 3 again, but I've been on the bandwagon of getting talent for Tua all along, and I know there's a deep wide receiver class and in this particular draft, and hopefully we'll talk about that in due course anyway. But in terms of what Ollie said, there are other offensive linemen you can pick up further down the draft board that are going to be solid starters and going to do a job. And it's all about weighing up, balancing that requirement between value and need, and what it takes the priority. Do you want to go for that elite wide receiver but get a less of a talented offensive lineman, or do you want to look the other way and go for a top tier offensive lineman like Sewell and go for a lesser quality wide receiver like, say, I don't know, Amari Rodgers or an Elijah Moore, for instance? So it's all about balancing the need against the value, and obviously it's the front office's call, of course, but every fan's going to have their own opinion, and mine is that I like to, I've said all along that we need that talent for Tua, and going for a top tier wide receiver gives us that.
I'm all about trading back out that 3rd pick. It feels like there is an opportunity there where come draft night, someone's going to be desperate for a Penei someone's going to be desperate for the next quarterback off the board, whoever that might be, and you're going to be able to get something. And I say something because I don't think it has to. You don't have to win. It doesn't have to be one of those cases where you win the trade. It has to be, we're comfortable enough moving back to spot X. Let's say Carolina at 8, right? We're comfortable moving back 5 spots and picking up a little bit of extra capital. Say you can fill that gap between the 4th round and the 7th round with a pick, and you can pick up something else. I know, move up somewhere else, pick up a pick next year, whatever. But if you can then fill that gap, you can still pick up a Jalen Waddle probably at an 8. And if not, it probably means Jamar Chase or Devonta Smith are there as well. So you're going to have your option of what's perceived as a top wide receiver talent. I'm more Waddle over Devonta Smith just because of the size. I think the Dolphins will be as well. But, you could easily go with any of those guys. And I think you could say you've got one of the best talents in the draft. It just feels like a great spot to be able to do that. Whereas you drafted a left tackle last year, and I don't think that any of us were disappointed in Austin Jackson. I think there's the ability. He showed decent promise. I'm happy to give him another year where I'm not desperate enough to draft another one. Now, I understand how good Penei Sewell might be, but the other risk I'm taking is now moving a left tackle to right tackle. And if I do that, there's no guarantee that works. So I might actually lose a player by doing it. We often see, this is one of those great kind of misnomers when you go into the draft where you see people say, this guy will project brilliant at tackle in the NFL. Well, if he projects brilliant at tackle in the NFL, why didn't he play tackle in college? If he played tackle in college, why are you projecting a guard in the NFL? Because it often doesn't work out. I'd give you a great example. Eric Flowers, a perceived disaster. You move him to guard, he's comfortable and he's more than serviceable. At tackle, dumpster fire.
That's it. And hopefully he's another one. No, he's got another year in Miami, and then he can test free agency again after some average performances last year, I'd say. Ollie, what do you reckon then in terms of moving? If you could, do you think you could move Sewell to right tackle? Obviously, it's quite unique in the fact that is Tua's blind side, and it feels like if you think he can translate over there, then he could easily be the best right tackle in the league in a year or two. And then you're sorted for the foreseeable future. Tua starts performing, just seems to work. Or is it too much of a risk to kind of do that with the 3rd pick? And I just hope it works out.
And the whole thing with the NFL draft is it is one big risk. It is one big crapshoot. And now more so than ever, it is easier to slide a left tackle to right and vice versa because these guys are so dominant athletically. But it's a huge transition. It's not just as simple as switching sides and being great. I think if the Dolphins were to take Sewell, it would actually mean Austin Jackson probably slides inside rather than Sewell sliding over to the right side. I find it interesting the gamble they took on Isaiah Wilson. They clearly think the right tackle position is a need, which is why I mentioned guys like Alex Leatherwood, why I mentioned guys like Tevin Jenkins. Jalen Mayfield is a fantastic, has fantastic potential out of Michigan. He's not there yet, but he's incredibly versatile. You look later on, guys like Spencer Brown or Eric Jackson, and they're all guys who could come in and play right tackle. So I think if you were to take Sewell, you wouldn't shift him from left to right. You'd do something with everyone else, and you'd keep him. You'd keep him at left tackle. I think the Dolphins. I agree with Lee. The Dolphins are in a fantastic position in terms of trading out of 3. If you can get decent return on that, you've got guys like you mentioned, Carolina Panthers. I wouldn't rule out the Detroit Lions at 7. I wouldn't rule out San Francisco at 12. I wouldn't rule out Washington at 19. Chicago Bears at 20. It would be very New England Patriots, and it would be extremely difficult to get a deal done between the two teams. I would imagine. You don't rule out the Patriots moving up because they're in a position where they've splashed out in free agency, and they probably don't move to 3. But that's going to impact everything else that goes around it and where those chips fall throughout the draft. I think it's an incredibly interesting and exciting potential for what could happen either before draft night or on draft night itself with that trading a pick.
Yeah, something we talked about on the pod before, Ollie, was the Dolphins are in a really good, unique position now and a golden opportunity to obtain more capital, because in an ideal world they never want to find themselves in picking up as high as number 3 again. I know it's as a result of the Laramie Tunsil trade, but in a future world they want to be picking in the 20s and 30s. Or 32 actually would be the best position to pick, of course. So they're in a golden opportunity now to take advantage of a good quarterback class that somebody's going to want to jump up for. And I've also thought about, well, okay, you can trade down a little bit, but what about trading down again and picking up more picks? Like you say, there are teams further down the board, as you've just mentioned them, Ollie, around who could be interested. Why not trade down not once, but twice? Because, I mean, there's a good chance you trade down once, you're going to pick up an elite player. You trade down twice, the player you picked may not be elite, but it will be made up by the fact that you can obtain additional capital in either in the current draft or in future years. So a couple of trade downs would be another good scenario for them to find themselves in, I think.
I think it's a year where, I mean, I don't know about you, Andy, in terms of your grading, but I think it's a year where there are more players than ever with a first round grade. 32 guys are going to go in the first round, but there's not always 32 first rounders. But I think this year more so than ever, there are guys at mid-20s, late 20s who will have a first round grade and can be you mentioned the word elite, that can be an elite contributor from day one. And again, the Dolphins with that draft capital that you've got, that's exciting, and it's an opportunity. You got to get it right.
Yeah, and like you say, a lot of good talent, but also a lot of good offensive talent at the top of the draft as well, which it feels kind of a flip on the normal situation